Okay, so the last thing that I do on a project is I create the white ceiling cut-in line, which you see to the left and on the right. So what I do is I finish all the trim so the cabinets are done, and then I painted the walls, and you can see that I cut into the ceiling, and then I come back and I tape up to create the line on the left, and I'm going to show you how to do that in this video. Now, I'm not a fan of cutting in corner to corner. Now, I realize that my cut-in line isn't that great, but I wasn't trying. But I just don't think it looks as clean. If you go into the corner, you know, sometimes the paint will be on the ceiling and on the wall and it's moving back and forth, and sometimes those corners aren't very square. And so I think just dropping the color down like this looks better. So I'm going to show you how to go about doing that. Okay, so I wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about how this process could go wrong. Now, it rarely happens. I'd say it happens maybe 1% of the time, but it does happen. So I'm just going to give you a heads up, and then I'm going to show you a test that you can do to make sure that it won't happen to you. And what I'm talking about is when you tape to the wall, when you're all done, sometimes you'll pull the tape and it will pull the paint off of the wall. Now, there are usually three main reasons why this happens. Number one is that when you go to paint the walls, you want to make sure that they're completely dry before you tape to them. Now, the required time for most paint companies is 4 hours. I recommend overnight, but 4 hours should work. But the key is you want to make sure that the paint is actually drying. Sometimes you'll paint in a room and you'll notice that there's a lot of moisture or it feels really humid in the room. You need to open a couple of windows and you need to get some cross ventilation, and I'd really recommend using a fan. Understand that airflow is the most important thing when it comes to paint drying. If there's a buildup of moisture in the room, then it's going to take a long time to dry. Crack open a couple windows, run a fan. If it's really cold outside, crank your heat up to 70 degrees, 80 degrees, but keep that fan going. The fan is the key to the game. Okay, the second reason if you go to tape and it pulls the paint off of the walls because you're using the wrong kind of tape. Now, I recommend using what's called a low adhesion or a super safe release tape. Most of the tapes out there that you're going to run across are medium and high adhesion tapes, like the cloth tape from 3M, the blue stuff, I think they call the general purpose tape, or the green tape from Frog Tape. That's a medium adhesion. You do not want to use that. You'd want to use the yellow one because that's a low adhesion. It's not meant to stick to the wall so hard. Now, this is 3M Scotch. This is the 2080. It's the delicate surface super safe release tape. This is what I use all the time, and it works great for me. Now, the third reason that this could go wrong, and this is the main reason that the paint will get pulled off with the tape, is because people will do texturing or drywall work, and when they paint over the top of it, they either don't do it the right way, so you don't get a sound bond between the paint and the new drywall. A lot of people will use paint and primers in one, and that's not the way to do this. Paint and primers are going to work just fine as long as you're not going to tape to the wall. But if you want a strong bond, you need to use a product like a PVA, a polyvinyl acrylic, or a really good primer. A primer is meant to be a bonder. It sticks really well to the drywall, and make sure your drywall is nice and clean, vacuum it off, or the texture, and then you want to paint over the top of that once the primer is dry. Okay, so those are the three main reasons that you may run into this problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a test that you can run before you tape up, so you don't tape up the whole thing and this happens to you. If it fails, you're going to have to go through a different process to take care of this. Okay? Okay, so here's the test to see if you can do this process. Best way to do it, take your super safe release tape, tape it up, okay? Press it on the wall really well. So press it on the wall really well and then pull it off. Okay, now you can pull it off fast, okay, or you can pull it off slow. I'd recommend pulling it off slow, but it doesn't really matter. This just shows me, this is showing me that this surface is fine. Now, the way that you're going to pull the tape in the end is actually back over itself like this, so this is the way that I would test it. Okay? All right, so I don't have a problem here. Now, if you can test it, like if you've done drywall in a different part of the room, then test that area for sure. You want to make sure that this works, right? Because it'd be a crying shame if you taped it all up and then went to pull it and all the paint came off. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start taping this up. I'm going to show you how to do this. What we're going to do is we're going to tape, and we're going to drop the tape down from the top of the ceiling down about 1/8 of an inch. And we're going to run our line. We're going to tape it across here. Now, what I like to do, you know that if you watch any of my videos, that I'm a huge fan of sealing the tape with paint. So in this scenario, I need to seal the tape with the gray paint. I'll show you why I'm going to do that. So let's do a piece of tape. Okay, so I'm lining it up with my other white line, and I'm just trying to keep it at about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and press it down really well. I don't know how well you can see this, but this is actually a textured wall, so this process of sealing the tape with paint is the best way to go about this. I'm not a huge fan of frog tape. It doesn't work all the time. And I'm not a fan of caulk, because caulk you have to pull the tape right away. So I've got other videos on that. So what I'm going to do is what I'm trying to do is keep this white paint, the new sealing paint, from leaking behind the tape, right? And the way to do that is to seal this tape. And what I want to do is seal this tape with the wall color, the gray color. That way it'll seal the edge, right? Then it dries, and then when I go to paint the white sealing, it won't leak behind the tape. So you always want to seal your tape. Again, it's the same process as frog tape, but that doesn't always work, especially on a rough surface like this. So paint along the edge there. You don't want it to be too sloppy. You don't want to get too much on the ceiling, but do the best you can. All right? And then I usually cut in as I'm taping. You could tape in the whole room and then come back, but I like the idea of taping it up and painting and sealing it with the wall paint as I'm moving along. But it's totally up to you. I'm going to go around the corner here. Okay, and then when you move on to the next piece of tape, you want to make sure that they're lined up on the top, right? You want to make sure that they're even. Okay, and I've gone around the corner here. All right. And now if your ceiling undulates, sometimes ceilings undulate, they'll go up and down and up and down. Just do the best you can. Either way, whether you cut it in corner to corner or you use the tape, you're still going to kind of notice that waviness, so it doesn't really make too much difference. Okay. So take around the corner. Seal that. Seal this. Okay, coming across there. And into the corner. And you can either try to run the tape, so you line it up here, right? And you run it down. Okay, and then you can either put your finger tight in the corner and hold the tape down and then push along. Okay, and then line it up on the top. These corners are usually where the paint will kind of leak behind the tape. Don't worry about that too much. You can always come back with a small brush. You want to try to get the tape tight in the corner, but I don't know if you can see, but I'm actually not really super tight, so it's probably going to leak just a little bit. All right, then take my paint and seal. Okay, and then once that's all dry, I'm going to come back and we'll paint the ceiling color. And then once that's dry, we'll pull the tape. Okay, so my paint that I used to seal the tape is dry. Now I'm going to apply the ceiling color. And you want to make sure that you come down onto the tape because you want to cover that line that you just created. Okay? Okay, I'm going to finish up. I'm going to wait for this to dry, and then I'm going to come back and put a second coat on because probably not going to cover that. And then when it's completely dry, that's the next time you'll see me, we'll pull the tape. Okay. Okay, so the paint is dry, the second coat of the ceiling color, and now I'm just going to pull the tape. And the best way to do it is to actually pull it back over itself, like this. Okay. Okay, so now we've created this nice clean transition line between the ceiling and the walls. Okay, if you like this video, I hope you'll think about giving me a thumbs up, and if you have any comments, please feel free to comment. A lot of the information that was added to this video was because of the comments that I receive. And if you're not a subscriber, I hope you'll think about subscribing. Okay, thanks a lot.